Hey everyone, this week on the podcast, Brittni and I are talking all about ghee. So we're diving into why ghee is so highly revered in Ayurvedic medicine, especially when it comes to things like digestive health, supporting healthy aging, and a few specific aspects of women's health that we will dive into. So we're sharing some simple ways to incorporate ghee into your cooking. We're talking about how we can use ghee as a carrier to deliver herbs to targeted tissues in the body, and also sharing a few unexpected ways to work with ghee externally, including in our eyes. So lots of good information in this one, including a breakdown of some of the common misconceptions we hear around ghee and how it can impact things like cholesterol or heart health. So we address that both from the Ayurvedic lens as well as the modern research view. So thanks so much for being here. We hope you enjoy. And if you do, don't forget to leave us a comment or a review on whatever platform you're listening and let us know. It really helps spread our podcast around. So without further ado, here is everything you could possibly want to know about ghee. Welcome to the Ayurveda for Women's Health podcast, where we simplify ancient Ayurvedic wisdom into practical guidance for everyday life. Between the overwhelming wellness trends, quick fixes, and conflicting health advice out there, we return to a science that has been around for thousands of years. I'm Rita, an Ayurvedic health counselor.
And I'm Brittni, an Ayurveda practitioner. In a world that disconnects us from our bodies, we are here to guide you back. Through body literacy, practical tools, and time-tested science, we will help you step boldly into a more empowered, aligned version of yourself. So let's dive in. This podcast is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. Views expressed do not represent our employers. So I just got back from the bathroom, was looking at my tongue after recording our tongue episode. And I forgot to mention with Vata tongues, you can actually see like trembling. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. My tongue is like very wiggly. So it's pretty funny to see when you're looking at people's tongues and how wiggly they can be. It is a sign of Vata.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, that's a good call out. Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because as we talked about in that last episode, listen, if you missed it, that in looking at tongues of people who have like Parkinson's or different neurological disorders, you can see like that actual tremor. And so I've definitely had grad students that have worked with me that we've looked at a patient's tongue where they don't have anything neurological going on. And they're like, I notice it's a little bit shaky. What's that from? And in my head, I'm like, oh, Ayurveda can tell us a whole lot about what that's from. But yeah, that's something I notice in my tongue too, as well. That deeper seated Vata there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good indication. Or even just constitution, right? Just like there's just more wind moving around in the body.
Yeah.
Shows up in the tongue.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Well, I'm excited for today's conversation. This is maybe one of my favorite topics. I think it's something we've talked about a few times of getting this conversation going. But ghee is something that I incorporate into my life in maybe any way that I can.
Same.
I've used it internally, I've used it externally, I've used it on my eyes, and that always freaks people out and they're like, what, you use it on your eyes? But we'll talk about all of that today and why it's so important. And I think we'll also address some misconceptions around ghee that we hear very often and hesitations that people have with using ghee. So yeah, hopefully this conversation helps to clarify some of that. Pun intended.
We're so lame.
I know. Definitely leave that in there.
Absolutely.
Well, Rita, why don't you tell us what is ghee and why do we talk about it so much in Ayurveda?
Yeah. So ghee you can also think of as clarified butter for anyone who didn't understand that hilarious joke there. So it's butter where the butter has been cooked and the milk solids have been removed. And so that's, I think, the part that can confuse people about ghee is they're like, wait, it's butter? And yes, it is. That's the only ingredient, but it's not butter. It's not the same. The compounds have really shifted where the milk solids have been removed. So the lactose, the casein, the whey has been removed, and you get the benefits of butter, the that we'll talk about, and all the nutrients of butter, but it doesn't have those what you can think of as heavy clogging properties of butter when we're talking about ghee. So, yes, such a foundational part of Ayurveda is using ghee internally, maybe externally, like you mentioned. And yeah, I agree with you that there can be so many misconceptions, and people can have a little fear around using ghee because they think of it as using butter. Not that I think we should be scared of butter either, to be clear, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think there's a lot we can say on it. So I'm excited that we're devoting a whole episode to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if this episode inspires you to make ghee at home, there is a video in the Wellness Library that'll walk you through how to make it because it is actually so simple. And once you get into a groove with it, you'll do it like once every 2 weeks, and you'll have it on your counter, and you'll go through it. And yeah, keep your expectations low of the video. This is like one of the very first videos I did, so I actually really want to redo it. So bear with me if I'm a little choppy in the video, but all the information's there, and you get to see how easy it can be to make ghee at home.
Yeah. Yeah. I think of that as we've talked before. I love to use this term kitchen witchin. I think making ghee is one of those practices where you're like really transforming what you're making in
Mm-hmm.
this really simple recipe that
Mm-hmm.
yeah, can go a long way to your health. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really powerful item to have in your kitchen for many reasons. So when we are cooking it, it's changing the proteins and changing the properties so that it is different than butter, right? It is a separate thing, even though it comes from butter. The same way that butter comes from cream and from milk, each of those products are different as we cook them and change them, and we change their qualities.
Yeah, and there's just so many beneficial properties. And I've had some clients joke with me before about like, are you sponsored by ghee? Like, you're so obsessed with ghee. And I am obsessed with ghee. I think most Ayurveda people are. And so, yeah, maybe let's jump in and talk about the many reasons why it's considered such a benefit for our health. I think one of the first ones that comes up for me is that it's really supportive for digestion. So ghee actually is considered something that enkindles our Agni. It can help to get our Agni, get our digestive strength going. And so it's interesting because you can also look at the modern science aspect of that and how we can look at the compounds and how it's rich in butyric acid, which has been shown to be really supportive for GI health and specifically supporting the intestinal walls. So I think that's one of the main reasons, or one of the many reasons, why ghee is so popular in Ayurveda and so often recommended, is it can be really supportive in supporting Agni.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had it described in my studies as being the lighter fluid to
Hmm.
the Agni, right? So it is kind of getting that fire going. It's like waking it up. It's sparking it so that you are digesting whatever's coming in next. So yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, you could think about that. It's a fire starter the same way that you would as a campfire. You're having
Hmm.
something that's igniting. So yeah, it's great, easy, simple go-to for the kitchen in that sense.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and it's lubricating too. So when we think about the properties of ghee, in addition to being this igniter, like you said, it's really cooling, it's really soothing, it's really lubricating. And so we've talked on a lot of episodes about when we are experiencing dryness, dryness can manifest as joint pain, this like stiffness and dryness and achiness in the joints, or constipation, dryness of the colon. We can have dryness of the skin. Ghee can really penetrate into our tissues and help bring in this lubricating property. So really supportive if someone's experiencing any of those symptoms, just that subtle switch of bringing ghee in as a substitute for some of the cooking oils and using it more regularly can be really helpful. And we've talked in past episodes about aging and just general things that we can do for supporting aging and how a big part of that is combating dryness. And so I think ghee is one of those ways that we can really do that.
Yeah, and really, if anytime we're thinking of a vata imbalance, so whether that's a transitional period of life, like aging, like you're saying, perimenopause and menopause stages, really helpful in that sense because the body is having less of that estrogen. This is a way of adding in lubrication and juice to the body to make up for that. And then also those other times like postpartum, that postpartum period, we see that in Ayurveda as a very vata vitiating time. So anytime that vata is in excess, we want to add in those opposite qualities of lubrication and moisture. And that's where ghee is so simple and so supportive in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, so really supportive for dryness, really supportive for vata, also really supportive for pitta issues that we can see as well because it's moistening, but it's also cooling. And so when we are experiencing more heat inflammatory issues, that could be inflammatory issues in the gut, it could be inflammatory joint issues, anything where we're seeing excess heat in the body, ghee can be really supportive. Again, I think it has to do with that lubrication to some extent. If tissues are dry, then it's that much easier for them to get inflamed in many circumstances. But it's also that component that it's rich in these omega-3 fatty acids, so it can be really cooling and anti-inflammatory. And I think that's an important piece as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really helpful for pittas. One of the ways that I really love using ghee and find it really supportive is as an anupan and a carrier. And so pairing it with herbs can be a great way of driving those herbs to the deeper tissues. And just as you're describing, this ghee is lubricative and moist, it's going to be able to move easily. And that's where we can think of when we're pairing it with herbs, we're allowing those herbs to move really easily into the tissues to have a more potent effect on a specific type of tissue in the body, specifically reproductive tissues. This is where we talk about it being really helpful if there are any menstrual imbalances, whether they're vata or pitta, like you were describing, or in that postpartum period, right? And helping to restore those organs and those tissues after something that is very powerful and ever changing. You're going through that birth process or through that postpartum, even through miscarriage, right? And having a healing from a traumatic event that can be traumatic emotionally and physically on those tissues. Ghee is going to be something that's really supportive in that way, while again, still supporting Agni and having the herbs with the ghee. The ghee is not only driving it to the deeper tissues, but it's also allowing you to digest those herbs well, especially if you start to have really potent herbs or maybe a complex formula of herbs for a specific reason you would have that. But if that's the case, it allows those herbs to be assimilated to the tissues more easily because the ghee is present along with it.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're thinking of ghee, like you described, that it can be this carrier that we can take with herbs. We can also just cook with it when we're trying to use it more for general health, all those reasons that we talked about with general health. We can also use it externally, which I am excited to talk about because I have some fun ways there. But maybe first we'll just talk a little bit about the cooking piece and easy ways to incorporate ghee. So one thing I think that's important to note with it is it does have a high smoke point. So it is really excellent for high heat cooking. And I think it's just a question that I'll get often. It's like, well, what do I do with it? Because sometimes, like you described, I am having people put a little bit in with their herbs or with their tea, but there's so many ways that we can just use it in everyday cooking. I like to drizzle it over veggies before I roast them. I think it's especially good if you have more bitter green veggies like Brussels sprouts or broccoli. I think it can really bring out that slightly sweet taste that pairs really well with the bitter taste. I always use ghee as the start of a soup or a stir fry, and especially if you can kind of cook your spices in with it first, that can add some really nice flavor. I really like to stuff ghee in dates. That's one of my favorite snacks. or I'll add it to like a warm spiced milk. If you drink coffee, we've talked before about adding ghee to coffee. It's also really easy to just add a little bit to rice or a breakfast porridge. So if it is something where the herb piece Brittni was describing isn't something that you're working with a practitioner and that isn't recommended to you, there are many different ways that we can just cook with it and have that be the way we're getting the benefits as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really love when I'm making a recovery drink after exercise or even after sex, right? Like this is like we want to restore the tissues. We want to restore our ojas, restore that juice to the body. Having ghee with warm milk and making a little milk tonic. Add some ghee, add some spices. It's like an excellent way to start to restore that ojas.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I think that might feel a little out of left field for people who weren't expecting to hear about sex on an episode about ghee, but it's making me want to add that as a whole nother episode to the list because I think that in itself is an interesting topic. Mm-hmm. But anything that you're doing that is depleting, and technically sex is depleting for the body. Right. So whether it's the exercise piece or sex or lots of travel or anything that is depleting, when we bring that ghee in, it's a nice way to replenish and rebuild for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, and that even makes me think about some other things when we're talking about external use, even though that wasn't what I was initially thinking about. Because I think external use, anywhere that the body is experiencing dryness. So I have talked with women who are experiencing vaginal dryness about using ghees, or sometimes it's an herbal suppository that may have ghee in it. And really on the face, and we can use ghee around the eyes as an eye cream, or you can even just use ghee straight on the face. I find that can be a lot. It's like pretty buttery smelling. I do use skincare products that are ghee based on my face overnight because I love the effects of that. But I do find using straight ghee can feel like a lot.
I've definitely had, I don't do this all the time, but sometimes if it's all I have, or if I'm traveling, I'll buy ghee and I'll cook with it, but I'll also use it on my body if I'm in a dry climate. So I think it's very versatile in that way, and I love using it. But we've definitely been like camping before, and John's like, "You smell like popcorn."
Yes.
Or like going to sleep, and I'm like, "I know, it's great." So yeah, in moderation on the body. But if that's what you have, like it works in a similar way as you're adding oil, you're adding lubrication to skin that may be dry.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just thinking as you're describing that, I'm picturing like Rosa trying to lick it off your face too.
Definitely.
But no, I've also used ghee for burns before, or actually a couple months ago, I fell off my bike, which is an embarrassing story I won't be sharing here. But as that was healing up, I did use ghee on that. It can be really supportive for wound healing, for burns or scrapes or things of that nature. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think I've told you this story before, but Rosa also loves ghee. And we'll have to post a video of it or on our Instagram or something, or our Patreon at some point. But she has a specific ghee look to her, and she knows we're in the kitchen and I don't even take the ghee out yet. Like the ghee is not even in my hand, or I'm not near the ghee, but she will go and sit in the kitchen and she has this look of like, I'm ready for my ghee now, mom, like, let's go. And I'll take a little spoonful, and she's like the most well-behaved she ever is when she wants her ghee. It's very cute. So I'll have to share a video of her.
I love that.
Of her doing that.
Yeah. My dog also loves ghee. Yeah. I mean, what's not to love? What's not to love, right? No, it kind of makes me laugh because as we're going through all these different uses, it's reminding me of that movie, My Big Fat Greek Wedding. And the dad in that movie is talking about spraying Windex on everything. It's a solution for everything. I feel like the Ayurveda people out there are like, just put some ghee on it.
Totally.
Whatever you have going on. Have you tried ghee? And I mean, we should talk about like you can overdo it with ghee, like all things. Yeah. Actually, it's kind of funny. We have this recipe, this Instant Pot khichdi recipe that's like a go-to a few nights a week because it's super easy. It takes like 10 minutes to prep. And one night my husband was making it and I was doing something nearby and I was watching him make it. And I looked and I was like, that's how much ghee you use when you make this recipe? He was using like 4 tablespoons of ghee in this 2-serving recipe. He's like, oh, I think that's why it tastes so good when I make it versus when you make it. So yeah, I think you can overdo it with ghee, of course, and that's going to be individualized to your constitution and to what's going on in your body and how naturally dry that you run, how naturally hot or cold or damp, or all of these factors that go into your prakriti, your constitution. So it is something where that can be individualized, but like all things, using things in moderation.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and you're taking your constitution into consideration as well. Like if the time of year, right? All of those factors, the seasonal elements. One more thing on the external piece I wanted to say, because I love, like, I will put ghee in my eyes. And there is a specific Ayurvedic therapy that is called naturopathy, which actually has your eye bathed in ghee. So it's like this little eye bath. So it's held within a dough ring, and ghee is put into this dough ring and then is held in a bath above your eye, and you rest there and let it soak in. Significant immediate results, and specifically with nervous system changes. So feeling more centered and more grounded after this, more calm in the mind, and then also no more dryness. This is not mainstream medicine where you're knowing like, oh, I'm going to go get a massage, like, oh, I'm going to go get a naturopathy. Having this done specifically at a clinic with someone who knows how to do it is really, really helpful, because it has huge benefits to not just the eyeball itself and that lubrication piece, especially if you're experiencing dryness, but even tissue healing, to what you were saying, Rita. If you are having degeneration of the eye or any long-standing chronic eye issues, this can be very, very powerful and healing for it. So having it done, like you had mentioned, the Ayurvedic Center of Vermont in one of our recent episodes about Panchakarma, I know they offer that as a service there, and it's excellent.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's something, there's different variations. Like I have had that done. And then I've even used ghee in a little eye cup before at home to continue the practice and do it a little bit more regularly. And it's interesting because I think it's something that can feel a little alarming. Like I can appreciate there's probably people listening to this that are like, wait a second, you're putting ghee in your eye. But it's something that every time I've done it, it's so soothing. It's so relaxing. The eyes are really the seat of pitta. And so it can really be quite medicinal. But to your point, not something I'd recommend doing outside of the guidance of someone who's trained in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, especially if you have hesitations around it or have a specific eye history that you want to make sure you're doing it appropriately and cleanly is the big factor there. Like you don't want to be having bacteria or germs getting into the eyeball itself. Yeah, and when I do it, I make sure like I have clean hands if I am touching my eye and putting ghee in there. Sometimes I honestly just take a little like scoop of ghee on my fingertip and put it right in my eyeball and then go to sleep because my vision is cloudy, right? Because the ghee is like this layer of lubrication over the eyeball. And then I wake up in the morning and I rinse and I feel like my eyes feel great. So I like doing it before bed because one, I can't see very well. It's like kind of fuzzy. And then it feels like it's at that time of day where my body is restoring itself anyways, and it's helping to restore those tissues.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be a powerful practice. I'm glad that you brought that up. Yeah, for sure. And I think circling back to what we were describing, that it's always individualized how much ghee to use. And I don't know, Brittni, if you have like a certain quantity that you've told clients before. Again, I feel like it can be so individualized there, but it's something where it's considered balancing for all doshas, but definitely something where kapha constitutions or people who have a lot of kapha going on in the body, kapha already is those earth and water elements. So they're perhaps going to need a little bit less. They might want to keep it to like a teaspoon at meals, where vatas and pittas might feel comfortable going a bit more than that. I don't know if you have other thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to begin and kind of gauge and see how that feels for people, is starting with even like 1 teaspoon a day. I've started clients with that, especially ones that have felt hesitant to incorporating ghee. I also have clients that don't like the taste. So we kind of like get creative with that. And maybe that's more, okay, they're using it with cooking instead of having it as a beverage or with water or with herbs, but it's more incorporating into cooking. But again, a little bit of ghee can go a long way. Like you don't need a ton of it. It all depends on how it feels in your body. And again, like time of year, like it's really humid and kind of damp out today. I'm not going to go heavy on the ghee. I might have a little bit this morning with water, and then that might be it, right? I might not even cook with it later. So it depends on all of those other factors and like how it's feeling. I don't think it's necessarily one that it has to be like, okay, this is now replacing my olive oil, or like this is replacing my cooking method. I think it can be like integrated in a way to get a sense to see how it feels in your body, or if it does feel different, or if it feels similar to olive oil. Me personally, I'd say especially in the summer, I cook more with ghee as opposed to olive oil. Usually like ghee and some steaming like water if I'm cooking veggies, and a little bit of ghee, as opposed to in the winter, I might go a little bit heavier. So some variations to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty liberal with ghee personally. I would say I cook with it at every meal, just about. I'll use olive oil or sometimes avocado oil, but it's what I use as my predominant cooking oil, and I will lighten up in the spring, just smaller quantities as I'm cooking, but in fall, winter, summer, I'm using a lot of ghee. But I think that's, to your point, it's figuring out what works for different bodies there. Yeah.
A little bit of ghee every day is like, maybe we can start a new mantra, like you know how Mary Poppins had a medicine mantra? This is like the ghee, the ghee medicine mantra.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
Well, but I think you bring up a good point when you're talking about if people are uncomfortable with it, that they can start small, because I do think there's some fear around ghee, and people specifically who maybe are experiencing higher cholesterol or have cardiac histories, and they're thinking like, oh, I'm consuming butter, like that can't be good. Like we talked about earlier in the episode, it's different than butter, absolutely. And if we look at the research around ghee, it's something where there's some conflicting studies out there. I always think it's helpful to look at meta-analysis that's really diving deep and analyzing all the different studies. And there's one that came out in 2025 that looked at ghee and lipid profiles. It was mostly studies that came out of India and neighboring countries. But what they actually found is that there was a neutral and or positive correlation between ghee and the reduction in total cholesterol, the reduction in LDL, the reduction in triglycerides, and an increase in HDL, which is what we always want to see. There are some studies out there that question a correlation between ghee use and coronary heart disease, but the meta-analysis that I mentioned also has found that to be statistically insignificant. And I think if you dive into those studies more, there's just so many different variables. And I think, again, it comes back to that same conversation where it all depends on what's going on in your body. And I think when we're thinking about things like heart disease and lipid profiles, like there's so many factors that go into that. And one of the biggest factors is going to be the state of your Agni. If the state of your Agni is not in a good place and you're eating 4 tablespoons of ghee in your meal, like that's not going to be supportive for anyone. So yeah, it always depends. I will say one personal experience that I have is I had a client who that was one of the main things that they came to me with concerns about, is that their total cholesterol, HDL, and LDL and triglycerides were all in the red. And they were actually using what I'll call a fake butter product. I don't know what brand it was, but some kind of vegetable oil that tastes like butter, because they were under the impression that that was a healthier option. And we switched them to ghee. And in a few months, when they had their blood work done, all of those numbers were in the green. So I think that's a hard thing to look at ghee alone versus the negative effect of those those other products that are out there. But I think it was really reassuring for her because she was really nervous to go on ghee and like how that could affect. So it was really reassuring when she saw that pretty drastic, pretty sudden change in her lipid profile.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good example because I think it does speak to how we've been marketed to of like what's healthy and what's quote unhealthy. And, there is a lot to be said for having a little bit of the full natural like plant or whatever it is, as opposed to, okay, here's a product and now let's add all these things to it to make it less of what it actually is and like cover it up and to have it be this like fake version of the real thing. So a little bit of the real thing can be a lot healthier than a lot of the fake thing. If that makes sense. But I think it's just how natural marketing works. And we've talked about this on other episodes in other contexts with what we see out there. But in this conversation specifically, there are Ayurvedic doctors that have said this, like Dr. Laud has stated. And then also in research that you're referring to, there is information out there from different medical systems that have seen ghee actually be more supportive for your health by increasing your HDL. So it is something to consider if you are having hesitations about ghee. If you are, I'm probably sending you this episode. So this is why. And hopefully this helps clarify that it's not something we need to be afraid of. I'd be more just intentional with how you're taking it or trying it and seeing how it feels. And you can always get tested, right? So you can find out those numbers, like test before, take ghee for a certain amount of time, right? Talk to the person you're working with about that guidance and then get tested again and see what you notice. I think to your point, Rita, it is important to consider there are other factors, very significant factors that do contribute to cholesterol outside of something like butter and meat and fat, right? Sugar is a huge component that contributes to high cholesterol. So taking those into consideration, I think is helpful in this conversation without just kind of this blanket statement like butter is bad or ghee is bad. I think that's what we're trying to move away from and really understanding, can your body digest what's coming in? And that's like where we begin in Ayurveda anyways. So hopefully this helps clarify some of those questions around, is ghee an okay thing to have?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it always comes down to what is the state of your digestion and your ability to break down food and clear out metabolic waste. And that is going to dictate your cholesterol so much more. I guess I should have mentioned too, if anyone's ears really perked up when I said that there were a couple studies that connected a possible connection with ghee and CHD, even though it wasn't found to be statistically significant. There were all of these different factors too, where you had mentioned products that are artificial. Some of those studies actually included this vegetable ghee is what it was called, where it had ghee, but it also had hydrogenated vegetable oil in it. And some of the studies were looking at really large quantities.
Yeah, and I guess the other piece I want to add to that is if we're looking at this quality of the ghee, right? It's lubricative, it's juicy, it's moist. We need those qualities for specific tissues in our body. And so if we are depriving our body of that, that's not helping the function of those tissues. And I've just had a few examples over the last few years with different clients that have had some of that fear around incorporating things like ghee or even milk from something that they were told for a very long time ago as a young person. And don't drink milk, you'll get fat. That was like the mindset there. That was the conversation that was being told. And we need fat in our body, right? We need juice in our body. We need these squishy, soft, juicy things to help lubricate our tissues. And those are good. We even need that in our blood vessels and in our veins to like keep things moving along. So there is this balance of having enough of those for your constitution and for your stage of life. So I just want to highlight that because I think there is a lot of language out there, especially looking at like the generation that we grew up in. And there's like so many trends that I think we'll do a whole episode maybe on them at some point, but like there's so many trends that just ingrain in us from a young age of how to stay small, right? And that's one of them. And so Yeah, eat the ghee.
Yeah.
Drink the milk.
Yeah. Well, and I think the quality, like we were talking about dairy, because we talked about dairy on a recent episode, our hair loss episode, and we were talking about foods that can be supportive for bone health and mineral health and therefore hair health. I realized after the fact that I kind of missed this opportunity to talk about how all dairy isn't created equal. And, we think about in India, which is where Ayurveda, of course, originates, cows have always been very highly revered in India and really looked at as this sacred maternal life-giving animal. And so when we look at how practices around creating ghee were in these times when ghee was talked about in this way, it was situations where they're very different than our dairy practices currently. There wasn't this forcible impregnation happening. They were allowing the calf to drink what it needed from the mom before the milk was collected. And it's really hard to find ethically sourced dairy. I think that we can think about getting ghee that is organic, that is grass-fed, that's coming from pasture-raised cows. I think there are also probably vegans out there who, unless we're talking about really smaller scale practices, that would still question fully how humane some of those practices are. And I am very open to that argument. I think that it's something where personally I've chosen to use ghee and recommend ghee to clients because I think it can be so important to have those substances in the body. And I think doing the best that we can to find and connect with farms and local farms and smaller practices that are using these humane practices is really important. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not always perfect, right? We're kind of set up against a system that makes those hard to find. And so you do your best with what you can in the place that you're at. And I think we talked about this in some episode where, like, even now, where there's always something that we could be in the back of our minds looking for a better source of something, right? And I kind of have this running list of, okay, what am I going to look for next? Of like, how can I find a better sourcing for this, right? So it doesn't happen all at once. You start with what you have and go from there. So yeah, hopefully this sheds some light onto the importance of ghee and why we use it and why Ayurveda views it as something that's very medicinally beneficial for the body. And if you want to make it on your own, give it a try. It can be very, very beautiful practice because you do need to stay engaged with it to keep it from burning. So it can be kind of this meditative sadhana, spiritual connection to making the ghee and thinking about, where did this come from? How was this cow being treated when they were producing this milk that has now become the ghee that I'm cooking in my kitchen and going to nourish my own tissues with it? So I guess that's more the spiritual side of the process.
Yeah. Well, and I'll take it a step further because, I love to go there. Is a practice that I really love is making ghee on the full moon. And then I'll leave the open jar of ghee on the windowsill, which actually it's a full moon today. So it's funny timing that we're recording this episode. But I'll leave the open jar of ghee on the counter to essentially soak up some of that lunar energy. And we think of the lunar energy as being really cooling and soothing and calming, similar to the properties of ghee and similar to the qualities that my body is always in need of that I think most of us are looking for. And yeah, so that can be a fun practice to make your ghee on the full moon and bring those intentions into your body throughout the month.
Yeah, I was gifted a jar of homemade full moon ghee after my first pregnancy loss, and it was very, very welcomed at the time and very supportive for that postpartum period. So yeah, it's a great gift to share with others as well.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah. Well, did we miss anything on the ghee conversation? I actually had something I wanted to ask you about ghee.
Yeah.
Because you were telling a story on a prior episode about Rosa loving ghee, and you mentioned that you kept your ghee in the fridge. Do you always keep your ghee in the fridge?
No, only really in the summer if it's like
Okay.
really humid.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't typically.
And I guess that's a good thing to include here too, because I have had
Mhm.
questions on that. Like, wait, I
Mhm.
don't have to put this in the fridge, isn't it
Right.
butter? But because those milk solids have been removed, that it's considered shelf stable. And I think
Yeah.
to what you were speaking to, when I am making my own, I think they technically say if it's over 3 months to put it in the fridge. I've never had a jar
Mm.
last that long.
Mm-mm.
But I think
Hmm.
if you are concerned that there is a little bit more moisture, if you didn't get all the water cooked out, which naturally there's going to be some when you make it homemade especially, but that's always an option is you can put it in the fridge if you have those concerns. But typically I like keeping it room temperature. It makes it a little easier to work with.
Totally. Yeah, I love it room temperature. I think it's not something that most people expect, that you don't have to put it in the fridge for it to stay stable.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Anything else that we missed on ghee?
No, I think we did it. Yeah, I'm glad we talked about this. This is exciting.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Hopefully we've inspired people to bring some ghee into your diet. And
Mhm.
maybe let's just end. Maybe I'll ask a rapid fire question here. What is your favorite way to eat ghee?
Favorite way? Oh, right off the spoon.
Oh, okay. Okay.
What is yours?
In a date,
Oh,
like,
sure. Yep.
hands down. Especially a date stuffed with a little ghee. Throw a little almond butter on that and some flaky salt. That
Mhm.
is my favorite snack in the world. It's
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rose and I right off the spoon. Not together, right? But
Not the same spoon.
separate spoons. We have different spoons.
Good differentiation. Well, thanks, Brittni. This was great.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thanks, Rita. If you enjoyed today's episode, it would mean the world to us and help support our work if you'd like, share, leave a review, as well as subscribe to our podcast on whichever platform you use. If you're looking for more connection or would like to support this podcast, we'd love to have you join our Patreon for $5 a month. Here you'll get bonus episodes and access to our community chat Q&A.
And don't forget to check out our wellness library, which is filled with self-guided classes, kitchen tutorials, herbal recipes, and more Ayurvedic practices, all for just $5 a month. Thanks so much for being here with us. Until next time, be well.